think that's all working and that's on the screen there. So I'll just wait for a couple of minutes just to see if anyone else is going to join, and then I'll start going through coccidiosis in chicks and how we can try and prevent it. So I'm quite excited to be giving this webinar. This will be the first webinar I've done, so please bear with me. We'll see how this goes, but it's quite a good topic to go through, I think, just about making sure that we're definitely on track before we hit breeding season. And of course, this is going to be recorded and up on the BC Bantams Facebook page, so you can come back and use it as further reference. All right, so I'll get started anyway. So coccidiosis. So this presentation is basically going to run through how you can prevent, control, and treat coccidiosis outbreaks in your chicks. And I'm going to go through why we want to do that and the impacts and the long-term impacts that coccidiosis can have on your chicks. So just before we get started, I'm just going to go through that the information presented in this presentation has been put together using the best information available at the time of writing. This is subject to change as scientific knowledge improves, and the whole purpose of this presentation is to help others enjoy their chickens and avoid potential disease problems. Every flock is different, and the information here may not suit your flock. Individual veterinary consultation is advised if you are experiencing issues. So just a bit about myself. So I've been breeding show chickens since 2011. I'm about to graduate from university in July this year as a vet. And I'll be working in northeast Victoria, and I'm definitely 110% passionate about helping others with their chickens. So first of all, what is coccidiosis? Are these tiny little protozoan parasites. They're actually found normally within, so they're actually normal flora. They're meant to be there. The thing is that they're transmitted by the fecal-oral route. So basically how your chicks will pick them up is by eating poop, which is completely normal, but this occur, it's because there has been an overwhelming amount of coccidia that have become present in your chicken's gut, and they do cause some gut damage, especially in a naive chick, which we're going to go through later on in the presentation. But basically they're just these little guys, and so you can't see them with the naked eye. You have to see them under a microscope. And yes, as I said, they're a completely normal finding in any chicken. It. Well, of course, you're going to get that typical sick-looking chicken, which is very nondescript and can be difficult to kind of differentiate between different diseases and other things that may be going on within your chicks. Early detection is key for reducing deaths, as coccidia burdens can have a very, very high mortality rate. And so, of course, the main thing is bloody feces, so bloody poop. So you'll pick that up first within your brooder box. So it's always good to examine your litter and make sure that you haven't got this occurring, because that can be one of the first signs. If you see sick chicks and look for a bit of blood in the poo, then have coccidiosis and need to treat and respond. Chick, as you can see here, lethargic, it's hunched over, it's closed its eyes, it's not eating. If you pick it up, it'll feel skinny and it won't have any feed in its crop. They can have a pasty vent, and they might not be moving, or they may be unable to stand due to weakness. So all fairly nondescript signs, and it's good to kind of take note here that the chick won't be displaying this behavior all the time. So in early outbreaks, you might want to just sit there and observe chicks, and you'll be able to see they might do this for a second and then they'll pretend to be fine and jump up and run around and be normal for the time when you're present, just because you've got to look back at them, and they are a prey animal, which means that they are going to try and hide the fact that they're sick. So it can be very difficult to pick it up in the early stages. But it's imperative that if you can try and get yourself into the routine of picking up when your chicks are sick, it'll save you a lot of deaths and mortality later on down the line. So the most likely time to see coccidiosis. So first we'll step back to how chickens actually get antibodies and immunity towards different diseases. So this is the same for coccidiosis for the most part. So if you look, there's your infective agent up the top here. So you've got your coccidiosis. It then is within a normal healthy chicken, and that chicken mounts an immune response towards it and creates antibodies. So these are your protective immunity, and then the hen will actually pass immunity on through the egg yolk to the chick, which it absorbs during the incubation. And then this means that the chick will come out and have some sort of immunity towards different diseases. So this isn't just for coccidiosis, but this is for all your diseases. If the parent flock is exposed to a disease and has antibodies, then that means that you will get some immunity for the first part of that chick's life, and this is called paternal immunity. So the only problem with this is it's not very long lasting. So your most likely time to see coccidia then is between 3 to 4 weeks of age, which is when these antibodies are actually starting to wane. So this means that the chicks then aren't protected, and if some sort of stress or something occurs, or if the environment's dirty or something, then that means that you'll get all the oocysts building up, and you'll have all these little coccidia, and then that'll actually cause stress, further stress within the bird, and cause disease, and can lead to death. So what happens is they naturally can get challenged by, well, naturally all birds have coccidia living within their gut, and it's very rare to see coccidiosis or actual coccidia causing disease in older birds, because they've already had this challenge and they've mounted an immune response, and it's kind of a relationship they have, and the coccidia won't actually cause infection unless they're placed under extreme stress. So it's very rare to see in older birds. And it's harder to control coccidia in winter or wet conditions, which we'll go through a bit later on. So, of course, it's all good and well to say about coccidiosis, but why do we actually care about it? So, as I said before, high mortality, so you can have up to 100% in your brooder boxes dying. So you put all that time and effort into, selecting parent birds, getting eggs, incubating them, and then you can have all your chicks die. So it's definitely a priority to consider coccidiosis and prevention. So coccidiosis causes damage to the gut, and this then causes a breakdown in that barrier, which is stopping all the nasty bugs from actually entering the chicken's actual bloodstream. And so if these nasty bugs get in, that means that your chicken's more susceptible to diseases. It'll have poor growth. It'll have other disease processes then going on. And of course, if you're from a nutritional point of view, it's damaged, then how is it going to absorb the nutrients, and how are you going to get good feather growth and good weight gain? It's not going to happen. You can see here by these pictures that coccidiosis can cause quite nasty lesions in the intestinal tract. So what this can actually lead to is something called necrotic enteritis, which is basically when the breakdown in the intestinal barrier means that you have all these bugs infiltrate and then actually start to necrose or actually eat away at And so this is just for just to kind of explain that there's a whole heap of different strains of Coccidia. It doesn't matter what strain that you're dealing with. We treat them all the same. But yeah, just depending, if you look and open up some chickens and stuff, you will be actually able to tell from the positioning which different Coccidia strain you've got. But as I said, you will be just treating them the same anyway. So prevention and control. So your aims of your prevention and control of coccidiosis, you want to firstly reduce the coccidial load in your birds. So if you try and keep that under a minimum threshold level, then that means that they won't cause the disease, and hopefully your birds will be able to have a chance to respond to coccidia and they won't actually die from it. So it'll allow them to get that immunity, that lifelong immunity. Number two, so that's create an anti-coccidia environment. So this is through your choice of your brooder box and everything, and your litter, and how your system's set up. So you want to try and stop coccidia from being able to be transmitted to the birds. So this can mean, regular cleaning, and ensuring that the birds aren't just ingesting a whole heap of poop as much as you can. Number three, so reduce bird stress. So as soon as a bird becomes stressed, then this means that they become more susceptible to all diseases, and this includes coccidia. So we want to try and keep that to a minimum where you can. So this is just a further breakdown of the prevention and control strategies. So keep brooder material dry. So that's through proper ventilation, and you want to minimize condensation. So if you have lidded brooder boxes, you want to make sure that it's you're not having that condensation forming and then running back down and wetting your litter. And you also want to minimize water spillage, which can be difficult with chicks too, because they can be quite messy and want to dig around and put their litter into the water, and this is where it comes back to the whole idea of cleaning out your brooders regularly and making sure that you reduce wet patches and that within your brooder. So you also want to reduce the load of coccidia in the brooder. So avoid overcrowding. So you want to keep your stocking rates as low as you can. Do not overcrowd your brooders, because more chicks equals more disease, because you've got all those coccidia just kind of proliferating and overgrowing, and you've got more chance of the chick then consuming that if they're in a tight, cramped condition. And cleaning brooders weekly, as I said above. Monitor chicks for signs of sickness, so especially during your risk periods or stressful events. And as I've discussed before too, that they'll try and hide the fact that they're sick. So you really want to ensure that you're picking up those ones that are a bit sick and a bit hunched over and yeah, looking a bit down, because that might be then that segues into putting some amprolium into drinking water. So amprolium is an coccidial drug, so that will actually kill off coccidia. So during times when you know it's going to be a risk period or a stressful event, or it's coming up to that 3 to 4 weeks when their immunity from the hens starting to wane, you might then look at, if you know you've had problems in the past, putting amprolium into the drinking water. Of course, there's also medicated chick starter. So the medication that's in that is an anti-coccidia stat. So it doesn't actually kill coccidia, but it just stops the ones that are there from proliferating. So that can be quite useful to have some medication there. It kind of then acts as a bit of a buffer too. So if for some reason, I know we all get busy in life, if you have sort of an off week and the brooder builds up a bit, at least you've got that coccidia stat to try and buffer that, so that you can get on top of your brooder material and ensure that your chicks are not going to all get coccidiosis and die. And the big one, hygiene, definitely, and cleaning out litter weekly or as needed, and getting rid of you know, the wet patches and stuff from water. If you're cleaning, you should be cleaning the water out every day just to try and stop, you know, chicks love to scratch poop in water and do things, and that's just a perfect way to transmit coccidia. So hygiene's a big one. So together would be to manage your environment. All right, so I'm just going to go through a couple of different bedding options. So this is one that I use at home, and I have no affiliation with companies or anything I use in this. But this is one that's a horse pellet that you actually wet, and it expands the pellets, and then after it's dried out, then you can use that for your brooder material. And it's quite good because it's an environmentally friendly one. You can use things like cat litter as well, biodegradable cat litter. Um, just make sure that it's safe for your chicks and that they're not going to pick it up and eat it and get a full crop of that. But you can use it to line the base of your brooder boxes and then put a substrate on top, such as like a bedding or a wood shaving or something. And yeah, your shavings are definitely your choice material. Try and avoid things like hay. It's not only difficult for chicks to walk on, but it doesn't have that sort of wicking ability, so you're going to get damp patches a lot easier. And it is good with wood shavings and bedding materials like this and cat litter, because you can just kind of take the clumps out that have got wet and just keep replacing that as needed. So remember, nothing replaces cleaning. So just going to run through a bit of brooder design for this to try and prevent coccidiosis and other diseases. So it's a balancing act between, you want to keep the chicks warm enough that they're happy to grow and thrive, but you want to have enough ventilation so that your brooder material isn't getting wet and damp and creating that environment where the coccidia can proliferate. So I've just grabbed some pictures off the internet here. So these are just a couple of different examples about different things. So I'm going to run through for brooders. So if you have a look at this one, it's quite a good design because it's got an open roof, which means that you're not going to get that condensation build up, but you're going to get that on the sides because you're dealing with plastic. And also you've got to look at things like you're going to be heating this too. So if chicks overheat, you know, they might overheat a bit easier in something like this because the plastic will just create that air environment and just become a big hot humid thing. So you've really got to watch having chicks in these boxes. And of course you're using heating elements too, so you've got to look at the potential for plastic to melt. So probably not the most ideal brooder box. And leading on from that, something like this using your newspaper, I would definitely steer it away from doing this just because you have got those heating elements. So if it catches light, there is, I have heard of stories of people and their whole brooder has caught on fire when they've used substrates like this, like paper, and shreddings out of the office. So great compost for the garden, but definitely it's not ideal for getting rid of moisture, and it poses a bit of a fire hazard too. So this one's really good for ventilation. So you've got an open top. So that's fantastic. It is made out of cardboard, so it's a bit questionable to the water spillage and stuff, whether that'll be able to stand up for the whole time that you have chicks within something like this. But it is good from a biosecurity perspective because you can just throw this whole thing out after use and get another one, which means that you're not going to get disease transmission between flocks. Alternatively, just have a good painted box or something that you can just disinfect anyway. And this is a great little idea just to try and minimize the water spillage and getting poop in the water, is to have it sitting up. So here we've got a heat lamp. and you've got a light which emits red light. And so what happens is this sort of the warm white and red lights are actually better for use in a brooder box situation, because too much light can actually cause too much activity within your birds, and you might find this if you're getting birds that are feather picking a lot. That can be because the light's actually too bright, and that's industry has done research on that. So it's definitely can be used in a backyard situation, and using that kind of that warm white light instead of a bright. And then yeah, so if you're having troubles with feather pecking, that can be a great way to reduce that problem. And then we've also got here an electric hen. Many people use these as a source of heat. Here we've got a nice big opened brooder design. This one's just another design that might work, just depends what sort of climate you're in. But if you're somewhere that's a bit more of a hot, humid climate, this design would work better than a box design. And then here we've got quite a nice little box design here. I think this panel can be taken out and it's mesh up top, so that's great because you're not getting that condensation. You're still allowing for ventilation. It's got little holes along the side for ventilation, so quite a nice little design. And here's a different one, maybe for chickens that are a bit older, or maybe if they're in a shed, you might be able to use curtains or something to keep the warmth in. But that's quite a nice design too. This one's great because it actually allows you to keep the bedding in the litter box. So, and you can also have this on a bit of a table or up higher, so it means that you're not having to bend over as much. But as you can see here, you've got your heat source. It's all open at the top, and you've got really good ventilation along the side. So that means that you're not going to get that condensation build up. Same with this one. And here's another one, maybe a bit more enclosed, but they still might find that that works well within their region. And this one's similar to the one up here, and just highlights how you can fold back and have easy access to the feed and water, and easy access for cleaning too. Because that's kind of what you've got to bear in mind when you're designing a brooder. You've got to have it so that you can disinfect and you can clean it out easily, because this you might need to do this every week. So if that's the case, you really need to have something that's user friendly. And now we're on to treatment. So this is what we want to avoid. So your treatment, if you've got coccidiosis, it has to be quick and aggressive. You have to get in there, you have to do it quickly, otherwise you will have high mortalities. Ideally, if you can create some sort of hospital brooder pen and separate the really sick chicks, this means that they'll have easier access to feed and water. You reduce your crowding, and that means that they actually get a chance to respond. And amprolium is the choice in backyard situations for dealing with a coccidiosis outbreak. If it's led to necrotic enteritis and it's really, really bad, amprolium may not be enough, and you may actually have to use antibiotics to deal with the secondary infections that have come about because the gut's actually broken down. So crop needling, I'm not sure if many people know about this, but it's basically sticking tubing or an actual crop needle that they use in parrots or something. You can use that in a chicken, and so you deliver the drug to the chicken, which is a great technique if you've got really sick chicks that you want to try and get through, and they've stopped eating and drinking, so they won't receive the medication and be able to get better. This being said, though, sometimes they are too far gone, and humane euthanasia is recommended, and you do need to keep in mind, as much as we want to save every chick here, you've got to look at how good that chick's going to be afterwards, and there is ramifications. It's always going to be a poorly doing chick. It's going to respond like they could respond, they may not. And it's just, if you're looking at getting something ready for egg laying or for the show ring, it's going to be behind the 8 ball compared to your other chicks. So there's actually a few videos and things on crop needling. That's something that I might look into doing later on, doing an instructional video on how to do this safely, you do need to make sure that you do it safely and get it down into the crop and not into the lungs of the bird, because if you go down into the lungs and deliver that, you will kill the bird. Just like us, you don't want liquids or water or anything in your lungs, or foreign material in your lungs. So if you feel a bit nervous about it, maybe consult a local poultry expert or a veterinarian. So that's it, just a short, sharp one. So I don't know if there's any questions at all. So I can't see any questions there. So thanks for tuning in anyway. It's just a little short, sharp video just about coccidiosis in your birds, and it's definitely something that if you can get your environment right, you won't have issues with this disease. So it's definitely an environmental uh, disease. So if you try and stop it by fixing the environment, then that means that you won't have to go to the vet and get your amprolium and all that sort of stuff. So I hope it's been helpful, and feel free to send any feedback to BC Bantams. And if there's any other diseases that you guys are thinking about that you're not sure on, just let me know and I can add it to my webinar list. Or feel free to send me a PM. Thank you.